Hello everybody! Today I'm going to be covering on the TMD channel the Death Knight. Thank you for this wonderful suggestion. I did a little bit of research on the Death Knight and there's lots of really great stories, including a really good Dragon magazine article talking about the origins of the first Death Knight in Greyhawk. That is Sir Kargoth, and his deal with Amon Ibor, otherwise known as the Sibilant Beast, otherwise known more popularly as Demogorgon. Where he was in line with being promoted to the head of his knightly order, but was denied for the role. Instead, a younger man got it. He challenged him to a duel. They fought all the way till the end of the day and came to a standstill. And since he was the challenger and hadn't bested him in the time allotted, Sir Kargoth was denied his victory and was, he just basically wandered off in disgust. And he found an old temple, camped there for the night, and Demogorgon tempted him with power, and he was easy to persuade, and agreed to all sorts of horrible things, and then some tentacles shot out of the ground and ripped his eyes out of his socket, to be replaced with the pinprick glowing orbs that are kind of synonymous with the Death Knight, and yeah, from that day forth he was an undead champion of evil. So, what is the Death Knight? It's a high-level, challenge rating 17 opponent, and they are basically they're the martial version of a lich in a way. So they're able to marshal undead and lead undead armies, and they're really good at that. And they attract undead because undead become bolstered by the presence of the will of the Death Knight, so that unless the Death Knight's incapacitated or destroyed, any undead creatures of its choice within 60 feet of it have advantage on all saving throws against being turned, which is very potent against clerics and paladins. It has magic resistance itself. They've got advantage on saving throws against all spells and spell-like effects and magical effects. And they are potent spellcasters, as they were mature, very high-level paladins typically before they fell. Although Death Knights can come from the ranks of barbarians, fighters, other fighters, clerics, but mostly paladins, and the paladin is represented here by the spellcasting list. Cast is a 19th level spellcaster. Save DC is 18, plus 10 to hit with its spell attacks. Casting uses charisma. And the prepared spells are Command, Compelled Duel, Searing Smite, Hold Person, Magic Weapon, Dispel Magic, Elemental Weapon, Banishment, Staggering Smite, and the Potent Destructive Wave. And it's noted here that they always use necrotic energy in that one. If you're not familiar with Destructive Wave, basically the Death Knight will take an action, slam its foot or fist or its hilt of its weapon down on the ground, and a 30-foot radius blast of 5d6 thunder damage and 5d6 necrotic damage powers out around it, hits everybody that it chooses within 30 feet. And if they fail their saving throw, they take that full damage and get knocked prone. Otherwise, they take half damage. So that's pretty nasty. They use a longsword. They make 3 longsword attacks in a turn. They can use it single-handed or double-handed. And they have plus 11 to hit. Do either 9 single-hand or 10 double-handed slashing damage, plus 18 necrotic damage, which is pretty wicked. And also, that sort of implies that they can use a shield or some other weapon as well. Typically, they will use a Hellfire Orb. Death Knight hurls a magical ball of fire that explodes at a point it can see within 120 feet of it. Each creature in a 20-foot radius sphere centered on that point must make a DC 18 dexterity saving throw. Otherwise, it spreads out around and blasts everybody for 35 points of fire damage. And that reaches around corners. It fills that sphere with fire. So 34.5 points of fire damage and 35 necrotic damage on a failed save. Or half as much damage on a successful one. Doesn't knock them prone though. So they basically get to blast everybody with hellfire all the time. They also have a reaction parry any attack with their longsword, and it adds 6 to its AC against one melee attack that would hit it, as long as it can see the attack coming. So that basically is testament to their consummate martial skill, that they can just fend off an attack each round as a reaction. That's on anybody's turn. So yeah, most of the other notes about Death Knights concentrate on their origin stories. So in the case of Sir Kargoth, he was it's his ego basically turned him to evil, and it's the ability of a paladin to be entrusted with the power of justice. That power corrupts them. And many of the stories, including the one listed in the book here of Lord Soth, where essentially their ego has gotten in the way of their piety, their sense of I am right and my way is the law gets in the way of I am a servant of good, and it can lead them to doing evil things. Their single-minded pursuit, their willpower in the pursuit of justice, will lead them to do things which are evil, such as using assassination techniques against somebody or using poison, something which their god frowns upon. And it leads to them basically being shunned by their god, afflicted with the curse of undeath until they atone, or they turn to evil and are basically recruited by a demon or a devil or some other evil power, evil god, which infuses them the power of demonic fire, hellfire, and other abilities. In the past editions of the game, the Death Knights also had a fear aura that they could pump out around them, and that was quite a potent effect as well. So you had to get past the fear of even approaching them before you could lock battle with them, and of course they'd be blasting you with hellfire before you even get anywhere near them, and of course wave after wave of undead which are throwing themselves at you without any fear of divine retribution. And of course they'll target anything of good that they can see, because the one thing a Death Knight doesn't want to face up to is the fact that it's evil, that it's wrong, that it needs to atone for its evil ways, that it needs to humble itself before the gods, because they've never accepted the fact that they're wrong. They've never accepted the fact that their own actions have led them to this sorry fate, and they are now infused with the power that they always wielded in life as something which was given to them by the people, is now something that they inherently possess and can unleash that power on anyone they choose without fear of constraint, without fear of reprimand. And the respect that people had for them is now replaced with fear. So they have everything that their ego craved in the beginning, or became addicted to, and has led them down a very dark path to an ultimate conclusion where they are a force of evil, and they're a potent one. So how to use Death Knights in your game? They're high-level threats, and they are normally a part of a larger play of evil going on that involves undeath or demonic powers or the actions of devils in your campaign world, or dark gods. They're the martial arm at the head, or at the very top of a cult. But bear in mind that the ego of a Death Knight doesn't lend it to being a lackey to anyone. They are commanders. They were former heads of orders. They are fabled in story. Legendary. Sorry about that. I just almost knocked my microphone off. Legendary leaders. They have quite a lot of renown, and they'll be well known unless they've travelled halfway around the world beyond the edges of their reputation. Everyone will know who they are. So yeah, there's that. They've got that reputation going for them. And of course you've got to contend with the fact that the devil lord or evil deity that created them has a vested interest in their survival and not turning back to good. So they'll most certainly go to extraordinary lengths to target anyone who's going directly against the Death Knight to bring them low. So they will bolster and send evil reinforcements from all corners of the globe to protect their investment. And that can be very, very bad indeed. They typically lair in fortified old castles, crypts, towers, mausoleums, necropolises, places of evil, but typically big, impressive martial environments that are resistant to armies getting thrown against them. So you'll be most likely finding them, if you're an adventurer, either as part of a large organised force or army that you're in part of the vanguard of, or you'll be infiltrating their fortress and going up against the Death Knight by circumventing all the forces that are around them on basically a mission of assassination. And going a small group against this guy is going to be very hard, particularly because the Death Knight will have liches and banshees and wraiths and all sorts of horrible things, including tons and tons of skeletons and ghouls and demons at its beck and call. And yeah, we'll be studying other magic and things like that and increasing its power and seeking magical items that can add and bolster it. So it'll have magical armor, it'll have fabled weapons, it'll have some sort of mount, which is well known as well. They'll ride around on hellmares or undead dragons and all sorts of nasty stuff. Yeah, so very, very much a potent force, and it's the things that you add to them, the story and the location and the environmental effects that they have at their beck and call, the items and artifacts that they have at their disposal that increase that difficulty in facing down one. You're never really just going to run across a random wandering Death Knight. As it's listed in the book here, they really do lend themselves to a lot of customization for your game. So yeah, that's Death Knights for you. Enjoy, and I'll have another video for you shortly.